Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're two dudes in a rabbit hole. I'm David,
I'm Gavin.
I'm a rabbit hole. I'm Riley.
and we are going over hypothetical trades right before the deadline for the NBA. Riley, what's your hypothetical trade you have?
This is one when I first heard a weird ass like 4 team iteration of it. I was like, that's a little too much for me, but I did like one particular swap in there. And the base of the trade is real simple. It's Anthony Simons for OG Anunoby. This is replacing the issues of you can't play defense with two guards who basically can't play defense. For the Blazers, replacing it with top five-ish defensive player of the year candidate, OG Anunoby on the wing. I think that would be such a good fit for the Blazers. I don't know if it makes them a championship contender, but I think it makes their roster make significantly more sense. And if Shadday and Sharp, whether it's at the end of this year or next year after the summer, comes into his own, you could be looking real scary. I think their center position is fucked with Nurkic, but Drew Eubanks looks really good out there. You have that. You have Grant. You have OG. If Sharp comes along, and then you have Dame. And yeah, maybe you still have issues on defense because your two guard is Sharp. Maybe you sign another wing and you just have OG play the two and you don't worry about it. I love the ability for that to balance out the roster. On the flip side, if you're the Raptors, I basically think you're walking out there with three power forwards in your starting lineup, between OG in terms of like his best skill set. Like he can be used at the 2, 3, or 4, but I think his best skill set is probably as like a bit bigger player, and then you can switch him everywhere. So you take out one of those forwards, and then you add a dynamic shot creating guard who's what, 23? Like I would be so stoked to see Simons in there. Like whether Gary Trent has to go somewhere else, whether he resigns, whether he's gone, doesn't even matter. I think the shot creation, the spacing, because that's the biggest issue in Toronto for me is just the inability to create shots and space the floor. I would love Simons on that roster. He's on a totally reasonable deal, which at the time seemed like a lot. It was like 4 for 100. And now he's out there averaging like 22 and 4. And it's like, okay, this guy is really fucking good. OG Anunoby's also really good. There's obviously a massive defensive gap. I think the shot creation and efficiency isn't even close. I think it's Simons. I think this would balance out both rosters really well. I think you can add other pieces to this if you wanted to. I think this is the base is really good, and I think it helps both rosters a lot. Thoughts, opinions?
You go first, David.
I like OG Anunoby. Um, that being said, he is rumored to be potentially pursued by the Nets. That being said, that does make a lot of sense for the Trailblazers. And for the Raptors, yeah, walking out with three power forwards is pretty rough. It makes the paint very crowded. Yes, you do get rebounding numbers, whatever, but at the same time, you don't get that scoring potential as if you had, you know, your 1, 2, and 3, not 1, 2, and 4, 4, and 5. So I think it makes sense. Contract wise, I'm not too familiar with it, but just player wise and swapping, it's a very good trade that is highly unlikely to happen. That's all
Completely
I got.
agree. Completely agree.
Um, I like it. I agree. It's pretty unlikely to happen, but it'd be cool because it kind of gives the reins of the offense potentially in Toronto, or at least playmaking duties to. I. It's kind of cool because Anthony Simons can play off ball, but maybe they want to go with this weird like, yeah, Scotty Barnes is our weird starting five, but takes the ball up the court sometimes. So I wonder if they go more into like, let's see what this guy's playmaking really is while having shooting options around him. And I kind of like that. And it's also a potential like we may lose Fred, so get a Fred replacement, and they don't really have too much guard depth either. So I like that for the Raptors. And for the Suns side, they've just been really unhealthy all year, and that's unfortunate. But they do need defensive wing help. If they can get a young guy that can do that and stretch the floor and is still continuing to get younger and kind of fit that age group with the core that they want to go into, sky's the limit because I just seen the Devin Booker, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges sort of as your 2, 3, 4 would be awesome, and then kind of just build it from there. But it's just hard because I don't know if the Trailblazers would be willing to just give up someone like Anthony Simons because, I mean, they had him, geez, I want to say when he was like 18, 17. I feel like he was like really, really young and super raw. So it's cool that he's coming into his own because I think OG was kind of the same. Pretty young, pretty raw, but really developed nicely. So I think it's a good trade. It's just kind of the same thing, unlikely to happen.
Well, I appreciate the honesty. I still love it. I've looked at the numbers again between the two players, and I still think this trade does make a lot of sense. Simons takes more shots. He's very efficient, though, nevertheless. They actually are shooting the exact same percent from the floor, 45.7. The difference is just substantial amount more threes for Simons, and obviously he's going to be making them at a higher clip by about 3%. Yeah, I mean, or 2.5%, but I doubt it's going to happen. If you really wanted to maximize Lillard, I think you need to make a move like that. Honestly, I think the deal is probably however many picks you can cobble up in the offseason after you potentially convey a pick to Chicago that has like a bunch of protections and shit on it, or release those protections, and then you trade Simons and something else, maybe even Sharp for, and any pick you can have for X, Y, or Z player, like Paul George is usually my go-to example of like this guy could definitely be the number 2 on a title team, and for stretches could be a number 1. Maybe you can make that trade if like it goes shit up for the Clippers. That's an idea, but I do think OG would be a really good fit there, regardless if they decided to make that move midseason. The West is wide open. Like, yeah, maybe Denver runs away with it. Maybe you just exploit Jokic enough on defense that it doesn't matter and you're able to overcome the dynamism on offense for them. So it's open. You can go for it. I don't know if it's going to bear any fruit, but you can go for it. All right. Who's
Fair
taking
enough.
the next hypothetical?
Gavin, what's your hypothetical?
My hypothetical was one that I was kind of discussing on Riley before we started the pod, and it had to deal with the DeAndre Ayton situation from last year because they kind of had a very rough Game 7 loss, and there was some back and forth between Monty Williams and DeAndre Ayton, and we all thought it was very likely that he was going to get moved or re-signed by a different team in the summer. But instead, he re-upped for I don't know if it was a max. I'm assuming it was a rookie scale max for 4 years, roughly like 30 to 35 million a year. And he's only 24, so he's still really, really young. So I still think he has value. He still has potential. It's just I wonder if being in the Monty Williams system in a high stress kind of, we need to compete. We were just in the finals. I wonder if he's just not ready for that yet. And maybe just a change of scenery will help him. So, like, the initial teams that I was thinking of were the Bulls, the Hornets, and the Magic. But we can start with like the Hornets one. That one would be Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre, and Mason Plumlee for DeAndre Ayton, and it would be Jay Crowder just to make the salaries work. So essentially, you're getting a veteran guy. I don't know if Jay Crowder would actually play for the Hornets or if he would just kind of be like a when Iggy got traded to the or the Grizzlies that one year. So just kind of potentially have a veteran guy that can play, but I wonder if he will just sit out. But it's mainly just to get DeAndre Ayton over there as more of sort of your proven center and see if he can play next to like a dynamic point guard like a LaMelo Ball. So maybe that's like a bunch of pick and rolls, lob threat, stuff like that. Whereas on the Suns side, you do lose a lot at that center. However, you get much needed guard depth and wing depth with Rozier and Kelly Oubre. So it spreads the floor out a bunch. And I mean, they were running some lineups with like Bismack Biyombo as their backup center. So they can make it work. It's just, I guess, the only thing that would be sort of scary is they don't really have that big paint defender. But that's kind of initially where my head was going with that. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? If you think it makes sense, if you think it's done, just we'll start with David. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it makes sense. The one thing that doesn't quite make sense with me is the high stress thing. He's a professional athlete. He gets paid millions of dollars to do
that's Ben Simmons.
what he's supposed to do. You shouldn't be getting stressed out to the point where you're gonna leave a potentiality to go back and be in the finals. Like, the team has potential. There's potential there, and they can do it. And you're gonna walk away from that because you're stressed. That doesn't say too much good about you, in my opinion. But that's the only thing that I have. Everything else sounded pretty good to me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What about you, Riley?
I think player-wise, it's fine. I think Rozier does give you like very solid guard depth. Like if he, for not just the Suns, but for like any team is your primary guard off the bench, playing 20 some odd minutes a night, that's fantastic. If he has to be like your fifth starter in your starting lineup, I still think that's like excellent. I think he can definitely do that, or even like maybe even a fourth starter depending on who you have around him. I think that's great. Plumlee, like it's fine. It's a center. He can soak up 20-something minutes in your rotation. Totally fine. Oubre, I'm pretty out on Oubre as well. I'm not super into him, but like I get the concept of him and the idea of him. I just don't think in practice it's worked out fantastically. But I do think if you're the Suns, assuming you can get like a pick or even 2 picks back as part of this, I think the trade makes a ton of sense for them. You're out of that contract, you get like much more short-term money from the other guys, and it provides a lot of depth. And yeah, you're going to drop off at center, but the Suns have proved, hey, we don't really need like a great center all the time to have like a really competent offense and defense out there. I do think it'd still be a pretty substantial drop-off because that kind of stuff catches up with you in the playoffs, whether you want to admit it or not. Mm-hmm. Besides that, I think the Suns would definitely ask for picks and probably multiple picks. I don't know if the Hornets would be willing to do it, but if they could be like, yeah, we'll give you 2 lottery protected picks, I think something like that makes sense for both sides. Because if you're the Hornets, if you're not quite there yet, you're not giving up those picks. But if you are a playoff team, awesome. You're not worried about giving up those picks. You're excited DeAndre Ayton's worked out in all likelihood.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ayton would actually work really well there just as somebody who could hopefully like grow some of the more individual skills in his game as he plays with ball. Like he's a really good team center. I just don't think he can this is hard to say. I don't think he can like carry anything by himself on a consistent basis. I completely understand the flashes he has. I don't think they're going to be anything more than flashes. So I'm out on Ayton. I have said that before. I don't think most teams are out on Ayton. I think most teams probably think he can be really good still. And that's fine. If you believe that, you go for that and you go down that road.
Gotcha.
Harsh.
Yeah, and then For you guys, what would you think? Because I think Riley touched on it a little bit, but the idea of Aiton and Ball playing together, how does that like feel to you guys? If that was like actually a thing, does it make sense? And then the other part of it too is they did just draft a center, so it's kind of like, does he just become like a high level backup at that point, or do they move him for something like? I know that's kind of the other thing I wanted to ask you guys, because I think that prospect of those two together would be awesome, but I can definitely see the growing pains, but at least for them, maybe that helps in terms of like you get that established piece and then you kind of just build around those guys
I think it's
since
a
they're
nice
similar ages.
idea. I think it would be cool, but in reality, I don't think it would work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard because everything's speculation, but I think that they need to trust their draft pick and let the young guy go through some growing pain, and get there before they just abandon him.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I really
Gotcha.
have.
I'm pretty neutral on it. Just I don't think what's Mark Williams at his peak, like close to like DeAndre Ayton defensively and probably like a step down offensively. So you're making the move now, but you're also just straight up paying a lot more money. That's why I think like younger centers like Mark Williams, it's just more valuable to have somebody on that team deal that even when it does expire, you're probably paying, upwards of 12 to 18 million rather than 30 plus, which is one of the issues of high draft picks getting extensions is most of them demand a lot of money and they get it because the team doesn't want to lose the asset even if they're not quite worth it. I think Ayton kind of was worth it, kind of not. It's really convoluted there. Yeah, that's what I got.
Gotcha. And then David, what was yours?
I do not have any hypotheticals. I've just been reading the rumors and potentiality for picks. Rumors flying around that the Nets are abandoning ship and potentially trading Kevin Durant as well. He's not answering questions after games, but they did. Nets came out and said no, we're not trying to trade Durant. Obviously, the Clippers need to get some help, at least veteran-wise, for their guard play. Yeah, I don't really have a lot. I do think it's interesting, though, that even though the Nets did acquire Dinwiddie, Finney-Smith, and then draft picks, that they're still interested in going after Siakam and Anunoby.
Interesting. What would that be? That would be like you probably continue Finney-Smith out the door, in one door out the other.
Yeah.
Along with whatever salary filler. Like I'm assuming they're probably trying to get off Ben Simmons, but if you're the Raptors, God, I hope every team just stays away from Ben Simmons. I'm sorry, man, you're broken at this point. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. You can shift that Mavericks pick plus the 2 seconds. So a first there, 2 seconds, 2 picks from Philadelphia. And that's, 3 picks, and you could add in whatever else that they really want for Siakam. I think you could probably get better offers for Siakam. Like, I don't think this happens, but I know a hypothetical Gavin and I spoke about a couple months ago was Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, and 2 first-round picks for Pascal Siakam. And I think that's actually, like, super comparable value because you have, a top half lottery pick in Keegan Murray, and then you have, like, 2 first-round picks for, it's a team that's historically inept, but they're looking good now, and, like, that's relatively fair value. And then I asked, like, okay, what if there was, like, 2 swaps as well? And the answer was still yes, because Siakam's probably going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of deal, and I think that deal or something similar to that is out there. So I think it's going to be hard for the Nets to try and move on somebody the caliber of Siakam. I do think they could do something like that for Anunoby, though. who's like clearly a step down from where Siakam's at, who's going to be competing for all NBA this year in all likelihood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gavin, you have any thoughts on any of those?
I'm kind of surprised the Nets want Anunoby. It sounds like they're trying to be like the weird like Clippers of the East, or another like where you just have wings galore. So I wonder if maybe they try to get off like the Curry and or Harris plus Duff, because maybe on the Raptors side they don't want to pay OG for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, that was kind of the only one that I really had like thoughts on. Like Kevin Durant, it's gonna be a long, probably a year or two before we figure out kind of what's going on over there. Because for sure he's not going to talk about it for the rest of the season, or he'll decline to talk about it, I should say. And yeah, I mean, it's just going to create more buzz because people are going to be like, "Oh, like get ready because you're going to put in your Kevin Durant stuff." So yeah, we'll see.
Well, that's all I have. Do you guys have anything else?
I don't think so. Do you, Riley?
Yeah, I think there's basically two teams here that hold the keys to the trade deadline, because like we can talk about the Nets potentially having a fire sale. I think odds are they end up just kind of middle of the road. Maybe they do make one more move, but they probably run basically the team they have or something very close to it into the playoffs, because Kevin Durant's still going to have an absurd amount of value, assuming like no major injuries during the summer. Like I guarantee you, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges, 3 swaps is still there if the Suns don't compromise any of those moves in the summer for Kevin Durant. Like it's definitely still going to be there. He's looked the part this year. Yeah, he's going to come off like a 20-game absence after the All-Star break. If he comes back and looks the same as he has, it's still going to be there. So I think the teams that like really hold the keys to the trade deadline is definitely the Raptors. I don't think Siakam gets moved. I think it's very realistic that Gary Trent, OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet, any of them, all of them, two of them do get moved. And I think it makes sense. Like the Raptors are like 7 games under 500 right now or something. And if you're the Raptors, if you can just
Draft.
pivot down, yeah, if you just pivot down and fall a few more spots, what if you get Victor Wembanyama? What if you get Scoot Henderson? What if you get one of the Thompson twins? Like even the lesser of the two, if you end up at like pick 6 or 7, is really valuable for your team moving forward, especially with how well you've been able to develop the few like higher level draft picks you have gotten in recent memory, or even like mid level draft picks. You're so close to being able to pivot to the bottom, and I think that would be the smartest idea for them, especially because OG Anunoby is effectively on a 1-year deal after this year. And if he doesn't like his role or anything else, because there's been a lot of rumblings of that, he's probably gone, and you probably have to trade him next trade deadline for less anyway, or over the summer for less, rather than a team getting 2 playoff runs with him. They're only going to get guaranteed 1. And for Fred, he's a free agent this summer. There's no guarantee he comes back. Same with Gary Trent. You could potentially lose these guys for nothing or very little compared to what you could get for them right now for teams really wanting to make playoff runs. I think you sell. You just start selling hard, and then the second team is Chicago, where nobody has any idea what the hell they're going to do. Every report I've seen is all over the place, from they're not going to trade anybody to they're looking to offload like 2 of the 3 quote unquote stars on their team. Sorry, Booch. And they can control a lot. You know, if they say, all right, DeMar DeRozan is officially on the trade block, like we're going to bit down, try and get, whatever we can for him, then that's probably going to yield you like some really good results. Like you could potentially get like Anthony Simons for DeMar DeRozan. Like that would be spectacular. So between those two teams, I think they both have the ability to go down, try and get a draft pick. I don't know if Chicago owes an unprotected pick to Orlando this year, or if it has like top 4 protections or what. I'm pretty sure they still owe it though. But nevertheless, you just have the opportunity to pivot down. And I can't believe, and I know there was like threats of if teams are tanking, like they can be stripped of their draft picks. holy shit, dude, there's Victor Wembanyama out there. And I know there's no guarantees in the draft, but if you're debating whether or not he's a better prospect than LeBron James, why are teams not just like pivoting down like a month ago? You know, when you were like, all right, we're 500, just like these other 13 teams in the NBA. Just go down. Screw it. Just shut down 2 players, fucking fake injuries, and then trade away X, Y, and Z player. I don't know why teams haven't pivoted down. It's kind of crazy to me because like the bottom 5 teams are so far below where everybody else is. If you pivot down now, yeah, you're still not going to have like terrible odds. Because I believe like since they changed the lottery odds, the 7th pick or less has jumped into the top 4 every year. I think there's no reason teams shouldn't be trying to get worse. Like get worse, get a high draft pick. Like there's 2 generational talents in this draft. Scoot Henderson is the best guard prospect in like 12 years, maybe more. Like he's stupid dynamic, stupid competitive, busts his ass all the time. He's amazing. And then Victor Wembanyama is ridiculous. I just think teams should be trading down, trying to get worse. And I mean, I think the NBA kind of nailed it with the play-in. A lot of teams are like, we can make the play-in. That's big for us. As a fan, I don't see the appeal in it, but I get why teams are like, we haven't been in the playoffs in forever. If we just make the play-in, we can make the playoffs. Okay, that's my rant. I think those teams have the keys to the trade deadline, and they would be best served to just start selling.
Fire sale.
Agreed.
Yeah, just fire sale it. Just start getting rid of guys. Screw it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Riley, it
All right,
seems
cool.
like that's all you have. Gavin, any last words?
That is also all I have. Nope, no last words.
All right, bang, bang, bang. That's it for us today, ladies and gentlemen. We're 2 dudes in a rabbit hole. I'm David.
I'm Gavin.
No, I'm a rabbit hole. I'm Riley.
We'll catch you next time.